The Signs Language of Adam, the Ancient Language Master Key, Untold Story of Language. Hi, today we will be discussing the Hebrew letter Chet. Chet is actually the equivalent of the English letter H, although H is pronounced like an hey with a ha, but it's actually originated from the letter Chet, like in the German name Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach, for example, has this CH sound. In English, unfortunately, there's no similar sound. In French, there is this ch or h. In German, there are several similar sounds in other languages, Dutch, for example. The letter was originally drawn as a sign, as a kind of a fence or a barrier or a lying down ladder, sometimes as a standing ladder. In some cases, the letter appeared as a rope, kind of a like an 8 symbol of a rope. And we can imagine how it was created if you can imagine two mountains or elongated mountains, and in the middle there is a valley or a gorge. So the first hunter-gatherers would build a fence on one side of the gorge, and they would chase the cows or animals into the gorge and then close them from the other side of the gorge. These animals would be trapped inside the gorge. That would be easier to hunt them. And in previous times, there was no refrigerator. That means if you hunt and kill all the animals at once, and a small group of people will not be able to eat as much, there's no way to preserve the meat. It will just rot. So what they did, they just left the animals standing there for months sometimes, and would take just one each time. And there you go, the beginning of the agricultural revolution and the domestication of the cows and other animals. This form of hunting using fences was very advanced technology at the time in human development during the last ice age, and this was manifested on cave walls amongst other things. I can imagine there was probably pieces of wood or leaves and cloth or other materials which were written on, like skin, but these materials did not survive. What did survive is only cave paintings, and there we can see some signs of this letter, which looks like a ladder. The letter indicates things like wall, buffer, barrier, yard fence, something lying on the ground, along the ground, like a snake, for example. This kind of structures would be also used for building beds, and we have it in the word nach, for example, which is somebody resting, but also in the root of the word snake, NACHASH. By the way, not just in Hebrew, in Asian languages as well. Because the letter symbolizes separation like a fence, it also is used in roots of extracting something outside, meaning outside of a barrier. Like if you're standing on one side of the fence, the other side will be the outside. So this concept is used for things which are taken out of some place. Thus removal or retrieval of something. For example, the Hebrew word for subtraction is chisur, less, because something is removed. Pachot, also to be removing something. Chutz, outside. Or a blockage, chasima, also in Hebrew. Using the root in the word outside, chutz, but also things that are surrounded by fences like hof, like COURTYARD, which became courtyard, but it comes from an earlier root, also in German. Hof means hof, fenced off area, like a garden. Also became to be a beach, or a beach where ships can land. So Chof in Hebrew also means a beach, as in sea. This is also used in names like Copenhagen, which is Hoffenhagen, which means a place for the ships to dock. In the Hebrew word Chatzer, for example, we see the combination of the letter Chet with the root Tsar, which is narrow. It means narrow garden. In the past, people used to have gardens and plots. You see, when somebody dies, they would divide the plots between the family members, and each brother or sibling would get a narrow part for him to cultivate. In these parts, people used to hide things, used to hide their valuables. You see, in the cities were attacked sometimes by robbers, and they would steal or burn everything, but the valuables were kept in the field, in the plot for each family. So the word hide means actually that. Not just run to the fields, but also hiding things in the fields, meaning bury them like treasures. The idea of hiding and the outside in the fields can also be seen in the word heide, which means today as pagans, but it actually means people who are outsiders. They are traveling outside, they're outside of belief, outside of the faith, therefore pagans, or heide in German, which means fields, mostly uncultivated fields. These can also be seen in the Hebrew word barach, which means to run away from something, run to the fields. Bar in Hebrew meaning fields, and chet it means outside. So running to the fields outside, especially when there is war and people run away, barach, this is the root for somebody running away. And hiding, nechba, also has the same root of meaning moving outside of the built area, bet meaning also house. This letter is also used in roots which are, for example, the word chevel, which means a rope, because it was used to take out water. You see, in the old language there were a few words for water. Bel was one of them. The water bel, also meaning water, and this is, I'm explaining this in another chapter, but chevel, it means to take the water out, or to bring the water out of the well, of the water well. The vel and well are actually variations of the word bel in Hebrew. This will be discussed in another chapter. This root bel is used, for example, in the color of water, which is blue. The names like the Baltic, or the color of the eyes, which are corresponding with blue. The color of the hair, which is blonde, which is corresponding to the color of the eyes, and so on. Of course, somebody with blue eyes was considered beautiful, and therefore Bella is a beautiful woman, probably because of the color of her eyes. You see also when the letter chet is used, for example, in things which are separated. For example, the place where we live in Hebrew is the word drain, or the dar, means to rotate. It's in the word dor, for example, which rotates, and dreidel, which is something that you spin, a spinner, and so on. And so this root there, also in the word radar, which is actually the rad and the dar. Rad, it's just the same root spelled backwards, which I'm explaining why this happens as well in my book. So cheder, it means a part of the dira. Dira is the place where we are darim, where we are spinning, where we are rotating, is our flat. So a room, like in German Zimmer, this is a part of our dira, the place where we are spinning. So a part of it, that would be cheder, meaning tile, a part of this flat room. If somebody breaks in Hebrew, that would be chadira, and that is penetrating something. The same we can say about a knife, which is sharp because it cuts things, it separates things, and therefore it is chad. So it's a good separator. It's a sharp knife, chad, and it's also the root of the number echad, which means cannot be separated. The aleph in this case is the not. I'm explaining this in another chapter. The a meaning not, or the opposite of. For example, in the word asymmetric, meaning not symmetric, alegal, meaning not legal or illegal, or in words like anarchy, which is the opposite of monarchy. So the echad meaning cannot be separated. This is just an example. The letter chet is also the 8th letter in the Hebrew alphabet, and it's also the origin of the German number acht. So it's achet, it means the chet, the letter chet. It's also the origin of the numeral 8 or 8, as it seems it's a part of the rope, which was one of the symbols of this letter. The Hebrew name of the letter is actually Shmone. Shmone, it means holding the count, the concept of counting as man. I'm explaining in another chapter, Monet, for example. It's one of these roots which are counters, and a number which holds the count is 8. I'm going to explain why. See, if you are incrementing 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8, with every sum that you get, if you sum up the numbers, you always get one digit less. Try it. This is, the digits from 0 to 10, repeatedly and in a cyclic way. For example, if you add 8 plus 8, that would be 16, right? Adding the numbers would be 1 plus 6, that means 7. If we add 8 plus 8 plus 8, that would be 24. If we sum up 2 and 4, this is 6, etc. So it will be going back, so 8 plus 8 plus 8 is 32, 2 plus 3 is 5, and therefore we always get numbers like 8, 7, 6, 5, etc. For this reason, the number 8 was considered a sacred number. Not just this, because it holds the count, so we have things that are counted which have this root of number 8 man. For example, one of them is the moon, the big counter in the sky. You see, the old ancient Hebrews used to count the months with using the moon. Count the days into months, etc. This was especially important for women because they could track their monthly cycle, and you get names like Mona, etc., which is the woman that counts, like the Mona Lisa, for example. There was another way of counting in the past using the sun, which is also called Chama, which I'm also explaining in another chapter of the letter Mem, but it also the thing that is separated the cycle of the year because of the sun cycle, the solstice. Therefore, the word Cham also meaning hot, outside the water. Sacred man would be, at the ancient times, shaman, somebody who's able to count the stars, the moon cycles, and calculate things which normal people couldn't track. So he would be shaman, and in Hebrew, a sacred man is chashman. So we have a group of priest kings, which in ancient Israel used to practice religion, and they were called chashmonaim. This and much, much more you can read in my book, The Signs Language of Adam.